We're now starting the portion of discussing the 5-year evaluation and strategic plan. Anne Marie Gold has been we've contracted with her to do the 5-year evaluation, as it is mandated by LSTA that an independent contractor has to perform that. She's done a great job with her focus group so far, and this is going to be our culminating focus group. And then we're all going to get into she's going to lead the discussion on the next 5-year strategic plan. So, Anne Marie.
Good afternoon to everybody. I know you've been up and stretching, but I'm going to give you a little stretch exercise to start talking about LSTA. I know a lot of you perhaps have moved into your directorships in the last 5 years, so you may be new to this process of looking at LSTA, and both in terms of the evaluation and setting a new plan. So let's find out how many people are involved with LSTA grants. I'm going to start with what I'm calling money bags first. How many people here in this room for your library or your organization have received 10 or more LSTA grants over the last 5 years? Stand up, please. Anyone's? No, keep on, stand up, keep on standing. All right, got a few. How about 8 or more, do you think? Stay standing. I'm going to get you all up on your feet by the end of this. How about 6? 5 or 6? All right, good. Getting a lot more. How about 4? How about 3? How about 2? How about 1? How about anybody who applied but never got a grant? Stand up. Fess up. How about somebody who never applied, never wants a grant, and will never take money from LSTA? Boy, there's still some people not standing here. Come on. All right, so we've got pretty good market penetration here in this group. Thank you all. As Wendy mentioned, I'm working with the State Library to look at both an evaluation of the past 5 years of LSTA grants here in the state of California, and also helping gather information for the State Library on what the new plan should look like going forward for the state of California for the use of LSTA monies. The reason this happens is that IMLS requires this. Well, let's see. There we go. There's about $15 million a year that flows to the state of California from the federal government for LSTA programs. That funds more than 100 projects per year throughout the state. Needless to say, California is the biggest state when it comes to both LSTA grants in terms of the money that comes in and the number of projects that are done throughout the nation. So when we look at how other states work with LSTA, there's almost no comparison in some ways because we are so much more complex. We do statewide grants, we do targeted grants, and Pitch an Idea, which has really, I think, resonated with the field a lot in terms of letting you try things throughout the state. Over the last 3 to 4 years, there have been more than 125 unique recipients of LSTA grants throughout the state. Libraries, cooperative systems, nonprofits, library support organizations. There have been over 200 Pitch an Idea grants that have been funded during the same time period, and over 40 statewide and targeted grant programs. A huge, wide swath of areas are being affected with LSTA throughout the state. It's been a major source of startup and seed funding throughout California. It's, as you know, you've been hearing today, ongoing initiatives like literacy, the summer reading program, preservation, major statewide programs, InfoPeople, Khalifa, Public Library Staff Education Program. And it's flexible enough to respond to new needs. Look at Career Online High School that has emerged here in California. Harwood, the Zip Books Project. So it's been very flexible, actually, over the past 5 years in California. So one of the things I think that I know IMLS likes to look at is what's the link between the plan that is developed every 5 years by a state library. And let me clarify one thing about this plan, because I think there's some misunderstanding about it. It's specifically a plan for the use of federal LSTA dollars. It's not a CLSA plan. It's not a California State Library plan. It's specifically for the plan for the use of these state dollars. There's a real clear linkage that goes on throughout this process. For those of you who have been involved with applying for LSTA grants, you may remember that actually in the grant application, it asks you to identify two things. One of which is where it links to the state plan, and then which IMLS focal area or intent it links to. That follows throughout your entire process, and you really get to think about that. You may remember during your final narrative report, and yes, I certainly know that report has changed a lot over the past couple years. Again, you're asked to create those linkages. Out of those final narrative reports that you turn in every year, the state library turns around and does a major report back to IMLS. IMLS bundles all those reports nationally, and they're available to actually create a picture of what happens with LSTA funding throughout the country. So it's important to kind of understand what that whole contextual relationship is for what we're doing here. The evaluation that I'm doing for the 5-year evaluation actually takes all of that information that you have created locally and helps me look at what has happened with the plan statewide. This is what the 5-year evaluation requires from the feds. I look at effective past practices, what worked in some cases, maybe what we learned by sometimes what didn't work so well. How did it advance state goals? And then out of that, what are the key findings and recommendations for the next 5-year plan? So those are exactly some of the things that we're going to be looking at here today. And as I said, I know that you know the narrative, the final narrative report changed. You can all groan now. I know it was a big change for a lot of you. But I hope you can see how this is going to link in specifically to what we're talking about here. IMLS is attempting to create some nationally normed data and outcomes from the use of LSTA, so they're able to tell the story well to Congress in terms of what is the use of this money doing for libraries throughout the country. As Wendy mentioned, I've just recently finished a couple of focus groups. I know that some of you who were able to join me both in Rancho Cucamonga and Walnut Creek, thank you very much for being there. We're going to do a little bit of the same work, but a little bit different work today also. Wendy also mentioned there's a survey that's going to be coming out actually at the end of today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a very quick peek piece of a survey that we're doing. But then there's going to be a major survey that we're going to be releasing next week when everybody gets back in your office and you've gone through the first 1,000 emails that you haven't answered while you're here. Because we want to make sure that you see this. It'll go out to the director's list. It'll go out in Calyx. I'm going to warn you, it is an in-depth survey. It'll probably take you a good 15 minutes to complete it. So I'd ask you to set that time aside to do it. It's a very important part of this process. It evaluates what you've done, but it also asks for a lot of input going forward. So it's a really important opportunity for you to provide that kind of an input. Out of this is both a quantitative and qualitative report that I'm going to be doing. If anybody's interested in seeing the last one, it's actually on the State Library's website if you're interested in seeing it. The other really critical piece is a new 5-year plan. And as I've talked about, what's in that 5-year plan will directly impact how LSTA dollars are spent in California over the next 5 years. So I think there's two important words to think about when we're thinking about the plan. Is it relevant to what you believe the future directions and needs for successful library services in California will be? And will it be impactful in meeting those directions and those needs? So as we go through this process, let's hold those two words, relevant and impactful, for the plan. I'm going to quickly go through some major pieces of information. I don't think this is new to any of you, but I thought it might be helpful, given what we're going to be working on this afternoon, to kind of look at some of the things that we know that we've all seen over the past few years. I know you're all familiar with the regular Pew studies. They've been coming out for the past 10 years, where they've been testing library user interest and directions. This is the latest one, came out just a couple of months ago. They're talking about what are the 4 top areas that people are looking at: how to use digital tools, more comfortable spaces in our buildings, buying 3D printers and other digital devices that people could use in libraries, move some print books and stacks so there's more room for other stuff and things in libraries. IFLA did a major trend report recently. They came up with 5 major trends, and although this is an international context, I think it has a lot of applicability to what's going on in our country here. The expansion of new technologies affecting who has access to information, a key role for libraries. How online education is going to change. The boundaries of privacy and data protection. Hyper-connected societies, empowering societies. Global information environment being transformed by those new technologies. ALA and the Center for the Future of Libraries has looked at a number of major, what they see as trend areas. And again, I'm assuming all of you have seen a lot of these before. I loved some of the ones that were in there: badging, resilience, gamification, urbanization. And there's general context and discussion that you can find on the ALA website in all of these areas. I'm getting a lot of feedback here.
Check.
Was it the other mic back there? Is this better? Yeah, okay. So again, yeah. Let me turn this one off for now, and if I need to roam a little bit. I'll use this one for now. Is this working better? Yeah, okay. Again, I think these are probably trends, and you're seeing them in some of your libraries and some of your communities. But again, I'm just kind of bringing you out some areas that we're talking about. Boy, we're still... Gee, thanks. it's thank you. And actually what I think is interesting when we're looking at some of these trends is when you think about some of the things that we've been hearing, both from the LDS consultants this morning and the systems, and then, and then the fascinating think a bit. A lot of those emerging trends and areas of focus for libraries are what we're seeing as Pew, ALA, IFLA looking at for libraries at the same time. So, now this is the part where you all get to go to work. Let me talk to you a little bit about what we're going to be doing here this afternoon. There's 3 actual pieces that we're going to be working on this afternoon. On all of your tables, you should have white agenda packets, front page, looks like that, says LSTA in big letters, general outline. And then you will also have a set of 3 colored pages. Top sheet is blue. Can you make sure you can find them on your tables? Okay. We're going to be working in 3 areas. We're going to look backwards. We're going to be looking at an evaluation of the last 5 years of LSTA, both in terms of content and process. We're going to be looking forwards, where I'm asking you a series of questions where I want you to talk and think about answers on that. And then the final exercise is you actually get to go to work and come up with suggestions for major goal areas and programs and their linked IMLS focal areas or intents. To help you remember what is in the current LSTA programs, you've got 3 documents there in your white packets. One is a list of all of the statewide and targeted programs that have been funded over the last 5 years. There's also a copy of the current LSTA 5-year plan. And then finally, a list of the IMLS focal areas and intents. And that's just so that you have right at your fingertips kind of key documents. And again, in terms of looking at the LSTA plan, that's kind of a memory guide for you. We're not looking at replicating that, but if there's areas that you think are very helpful, feel free to pull from them also. So what we're going to be doing at each one of your tables, I'm going to ask you to start by literally just turning to the person sitting next to you and beginning a discussion of the questions. So in this example, on looking backwards, you've got 2 questions. Grant programs, which were most effective, least effective. Grant process, what worked, what didn't work. Spend about 5 minutes just tossing back and forth ideas. Then come back together as a table, share what you've come up with. One person at each table, one very brave person, is going to volunteer to be the recorder. You're the person who's going to pick up the colored sheets. And you're going to be recording what your table comes up with. And then we're going to do a speed round, where I'm going to be asking you each to report out a unique thing that your table has come up with.
That's a training.
Wendy and Monica are going to have mics, and basically what I'm going to be asking you all to do is very quickly we're going to go around the room. Give me one thing that's on your list that nobody else has mentioned. Okay? Now, you may all wonder how we're going to be capturing all of this information. That's what the colored sheets are for. At the end of this afternoon, I'm going to ask you to leave those colored sheets on your table. This way, we're dispensing with the big easel pads. You notice there are this is a dot-free room. I promise no dots. So let's start at the very back, because you never ever get to start in the back. And I see Lisa Dale standing up. Let's start with that table. One thing on grant programs which were most effective, least effective.
She said Lisa.
Whoever at that table wants to report out.
Okay, one of the things that I think most effective would be zip books.
Okay. Let's move up the room to the next table. Just pass the mic on up.
And please introduce yourself when you stand up.
Hi, I'm Barbara Lockwood from Calabasas. Can you hear me? You know what? My staff really, really loved the Books for You Common Core, because
Great,
it was
okay.
just an infusion of money at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, Stephanie Beveridge from Huntington Beach.
Quiet, everybody. Please listen.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. We had, we also had the Books for You, but we also had Khalifa for the simplification aspect of getting around your internal purchasing departments,
Great.
and other lovely things in addition to the wonderful discounts that they
Great,
get for
thank
us.
you. Next table.
We had a lot of things, and there was some disagreement, but one thing we generally all agreed on was Info People. Info People is, incredibly valuable for training.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think you could ask anybody this question and get a different answer for sure, but I like the ELF program. We're a low-income library, and we benefited greatly from being able to get the help with ELF and getting the early programs going for the ages 3 and under.
And that's why we're asking everybody, because yes, we'll get different answers from everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so our guys really liked Transforming Life After 50.
Great.
table 1 really liked pitch an idea.
Great. Good. We're going to move to table 8.
Pitch an idea.
We need.
Sorry, I was trying to hurry it along. Staff innovation.
Good.
Jerry Garzone with Oakland, and ours was literacy.
One of the things
Hey, please respect each other.
one of the things we had under most effective was the summer reading program.
Okay.
We think as a table that the Veterans Connect at the library is the most relevant and impactful.
Yeah, no influence on it. Is your speaker? All right, there you go.
Pitch an idea, which I know has already been said, but we think that it deserves to be said a second time. So.
We said California Center for the Book, particularly the Books for Action, Books to Action, sorry.
One thing that we had was the effectiveness of the Harwood training. And what doesn't work is sometimes the extra work in planning when you have a small staff for planning a grant. Sometimes you just get a small amount of money and then all the follow-up work after the grant.
I'm not going to do another round of what didn't work, but let me ask if any tables have any particular thing they want to throw out there that you had talked about. All right. I see a table in the middle there.
We think it's a bit of a problem when there's a list that's that long, and most of us didn't know about at least half of them.
Okay, good point.
Our table thought the volunteer match get involved was not effective.
Okay.
Volunteer match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that we talked about was it's really difficult when you have programs that are very staff intensive or require a lot of volunteer intervention, particularly for libraries that don't have that capacity.
Okay.
We suggested that the grant process include more regional cooperation for greater impact.
Okay. Good idea. Other comments about what didn't work?
So grants that are too narrow in focus, and too specific. So rather than doing specifically funding just the awe stations, to actually fund tech replacement enhancement grants, and people can decide how they use that tech.
I'm not speaking for our table here because we didn't discuss it, although we did have our side conversation. But as a library director, I feel sometimes like I'm standing there and there's balls being thrown at me. Like there's this program, and then 3 weeks later there's this program, and then 3 weeks later there's this program, and trying to figure out which is most important for me and not wanting to miss the opportunity can be a real challenge.
Well, we're getting some rich comments. This is great. Right, Pete?
Mine's related to that. Unrealistic deadlines, because I have to go before my board to apply for a grant, and that is at least a 3 to 4 week process, and sometimes I only have 2 weeks to apply for some things because there's not a lot of
Yeah, and I want to build on what Kathy said. The way the grant opportunities, it's a ball and being pitched at you. You don't know which one to pick up and run with. And what happens, you apply, and all of a sudden you see the one you really want, but you've already committed your staff and your resources, and so you kind of end up, and so I would like to see a plan and instead of a panic, because it feels like that. A calendar of what grants are coming up so that we can choose and we can go to our boards if we need to and be thoughtful instead of reactive.
Yes. We're clearly getting into some of the grant process, and it kind of, which is great, because I know from the focus groups that I did last week, we certainly had some in-depth conversation about some process issues. So rather than do another around the room, since I think it's working quite well to just kind of do a pop-up, comments about process, what worked, what didn't work.
We had problems with the STEP grant, the Skills for Teenage Pregnancy, and I've talked to other libraries who also had the same issues, and we did everything we could to get these young teens to the library, calling them each day of the meeting, and nobody would show up.
Okay, on the process side, an application form that you can save and go back to instead of having to fill out all in one sitting would be really helpful. And if you could do pitch grants on more than one cycle, I know it's around the fiscal year, but if we could do them on different timelines so we could have programs at different times of the year, like during the summer or things like that, that would really help.
This is kind of process/programs, but we talked about all the different preservation programs and that it would make more sense to us if it was just one.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you have the microphone, we're better able to capture the audio for the video that we're doing.
Right. Our group wanted to allow the funds to cover staffing costs.
Our group talked about, you know, the importance of responsive grant monitors in terms of the process and helping, but I also think that there needs to be more support for first-time applicants. The requirements for an LSTA grant in terms of reporting are not intuitive by any means, and a lot of people simply do not know what's required of them, and we don't, and then it seems to vary sometimes depending on which grant you're doing as to what level of reporting you have to do. So, you know, the director ends up being the kind of LSTA coach, which is okay, but I'm not always available. So that's definitely something.
We've got room for about another 2 comments, let's say, and then we're going to move on to the next section. But don't worry about your not capturing all your comments. Remember, we're going to pick up the sheets, and I also will have the full video from today.
All right, so to build on what
your mic just died.
We had a really robust conversation about the actual Pitch an Idea grant because when I was first applying for grants, one of my most miserable failures was the fact that I believed it was actually pitching an idea as opposed to do the long form application in advance and be prepared to answer every particular question. I think the first round of Pitch an Idea was legitimately a pitch. It was a concept, but I think we love Pitch an Idea as a concept with just some clarity about the fact that this is not really a pitch in the traditional sense of the word. It's a well thought out process. And so we did have another one that we're going to break the rules here.
So in relation to wanting to learn about all of the grants that happen out there, these are supposed to be prototypes and experiments that we can all learn from, but I don't know that there's really an effective reporting back to everybody else, the people who didn't do the grant who could learn something about it, not just the reporting form, but we're not going to be able to go through all of that. Some sort of encapsulated, like here are the learning, or here are the things that we learned, here are the things that you might try to replicate.
Great, thank you. And again, we are going to move on at this point, but I think you probably all have lots of great ideas. We will be picking them up. So the next section is looking forward. And what I'm asking you to do is I have 6 specific questions here that are fairly broad-based. It's asking you what kind of community do you want? What are your community needs? A really important part of that question is, do you think that there are some community needs or issues that are beyond the scope of a library to address? That's very difficult for our profession to say, well, we don't do that. but I want you to really think about that issue. Where do you think libraries will be in the next 5 years? What are our important funding needs? What's keeping us from making the progress that we want to make? And then finally, kind of a fun one that's a little bit of a lead-in to our last piece is, if libraries could only do 6 things, what would they be? So, again, start one-on-one conversations, go to the table, and then we're going to do the round-robin report out again. So, go ahead and think. We're going to do kind of a similar speed round. Clearly, we don't have time to answer all 6 questions. So I'm going to ask you, we are going to do a full speed round on the last question, the 6 things question, because I think that's going to be really interesting to see what you come up with. But the other 5 questions, I'm going to start with table 8 here, and let's just go through the questions. And so table 8, why don't you start with the first question? What kind of community do you want?
Our table said that they wanted an educated, curious, open-minded community that was accessible, innovative, mutually supportive, and socially collaborative, inspiring the best in all of us. Woo!
And do we get whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles on that too?
Absolutely.
Good. I'm for it then.
You asked for a vision, so we gave you a vision.
Thank you. Table 9. How about community needs? Are there any ones that libraries that are beyond the scope of libraries?
Oh, we're answering number 2. All right. Yeah. So beyond the scope of libraries, we talked about really curriculum-based. We provide supplemental education, but not curriculum-based education. Information, but not advice, that we would provide connections to resources, but not necessarily the medical advice or the legal advice you were looking for. Providing a forum for issues, but not necessarily addressing them ourselves. Big issues like homelessness, environmental issues, things like that. And then did you want the side of what we will address?
Sure, give me a quick list.
Systemic racism, we felt like the libraries are poised well to address. Leveling the playing field, really leveling that socioeconomic divide. And then literacy, things like early childhood literacy, adult literacy, technology literacy.
Great, great. Next table. How about where do you think libraries will be in the next 5 years?
Follow technologies. Oh, stand up. Okay. I am standing up. Okay. I'm repeating Clara. Okay. We're looking at new ways of delivery systems and services, which goes back to electronically, physically, and in the future, drones, you know, whatever happens. And one of the, yes, and one of our real things that I only have one word to answer on almost every question was literacy for age 0 to 5 and for the adults, and let the schools do the school thing.
Okay. How about table after that? What do you think the most important funding needs are?
Well, I'm sitting at a table with some fantastic grant monitors and a few public libraries, so our answers were a bit different, but they definitely, which one are we on? Money. Which one? Oh,
funding needs.
Number 6. Oh, construction, facility. I think that we're overdue to give some love to our buildings, and staff training and development. As there's so many changes in technology, we need to keep our staff moving forward.
Okay. Table 12. So, what's keeping us from making the progress?
The cash.
I love succinct answers. Let's do another quick round of these first 5 questions. What kind of community?
Ms. Jones?
Oh, I'm going back to the beginning. Okay. I'm sorry. I am going back to the beginning. Where do we think library program services will be in the next 5 years?
No, what kind of community?
Oh, shit. Sorry. sorry.
Open mic.
We said that we want to see the library community as a whole have more regional and statewide collaboration and more sharing and transparency.
Great, thank you. Table in the back, community needs, anything beyond the scope of libraries?
We have technology needs to be more proactive rather than reactive, and literacy in many, many different ways.
Great. And then moving forward, where are we going to be in the next 5 years?
To toss out a few ideas that we had that from a technology perspective will be more mobile dominated, and we'll need to be focused on providing our services through mobile devices. That libraries, though, will continue to be community gathering spaces and safe public spaces, that we really need to focus on being open a lot of hours and being that safe community gathering place. And that will also still have books, and we don't want to forget about them.
Great. Any other comments on funding needs from the next table, other than the word more?
I think 6 is passing.
Number 7? What is keeping us from making the progress we want? The measures of a library's value that our funders see have not changed, and libraries have.
Very interesting comment. Thank you. Thank you. All right, now, 6 things. Start at the next table, and we're going to do a quick circuit around the room. Interesting to see what those 6 things are. And give us something unique from your table, and hopefully by the time we reach the end, we'll still be getting unique ideas.
Well, we're still trying to integrate all the 6 things that we had up, but...
You only get one. Only get one.
All right.
Each table gets
Informal
one.
education.
What?
Informal education.
All right. Next table.
Table 3.
Okay, I think that we all agree that literacy for all ages is very important.
Okay, table 2.
Integration of immigrants and immigrant services.
Great.
Are we still on number 8?
We're on number 8. It's your 6
Okay.
things.
Table 1 says avoiding the digital dark age.
Okay.
Staff training and development.
Okay.
Supporting community engagement and an informed citizenry.
Yep. Gonna just loop around the room.
Flexible space and design.
Technological literacy.
Reflecting the needs of our local community.
Neutral space.
Advocacy. Ooh, that was hard to say.
Okay, I'm going to go back to being a broken record, and I'll say books.
All right, we're not passing. Thinking about influencing library schools and the education of the librarians who are coming, and thinking about other professions that we should be drawing from and teaching them to work in libraries.
All right. Okay. A lot of what we came up with has already been said, but one of the things that we talked about was community partnerships.
Early childhood and supporting families.
Great. I love all of these ideas. Broad cross the spectrum. I think we started with table 3, didn't we? I think so. Great. So the purpose of both of these exercises is to get you ready for the last one, where you actually get to sit down and really think about what you want to see in this new LSTA plan. What are some of the broad-based goals? What are some of the programs, kind of the specific areas of program that might link to that goal? It's not a specific grant program necessarily, but are there specific areas of focus for that goal? And then you'll notice, and again, it's the yellow sheet of paper that you've got on your table. As you look at that, think about what IMLS focal area or intent they link to, because again, that is a critical part of this process, is the linkage from the state plan to the national focal areas of intents. So I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to work on this. So, go. Okay, let's come back together and get some feedback on where you think the state should be heading for the next 5 years of LSTA. Remember, all you've got at risk is about $70 million. What?
Yeah, but what you could do with $70 million on one thing instead of 100 things.
Great point. The comment is what you could do with $70 million on one thing instead of hundreds of things. Valid point. Valid point, interesting point. Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do, we'll have probably time for about one round of going around the room and give me, I was about to say, your favorite goal that you've come up with and/or programs. Maybe you haven't had a chance to talk about that. But again, what I'm going to ask you to do is try and don't replicate something that we've heard before. Let's see kind of the broad context of what we're getting. Let's start with table 8 here.
All right, who's your speaker?
Okay, one of the things that we said was improve the library's physical and technological infrastructure. Our goal is creating a safe and welcoming environment for staff and the public, and that's in institutional capacity.
Great.
Hi, Brad McCulley, Burlingame Library. One of our goals was cultural inclusion, and we had some programs for that. Facilitate, provide space for community dialogues, create community partnerships to expand, and something in dialogue. And take the conversation beyond the library's walls.
Okay.
Well, we're going to reiterate the need for functioning, fresh facilities. Because without patrons coming into the library, why have a library? And who wants to come to a defunct, dingy library? So that's where we're going.
Passing table.
Yeah, so our tie-in was institutional capacity in the focal area, and it's just facilities at work and facilities that people would like to come into. So.
Got a lot of that on Thursday.
No, I forgot that I was on film. So we also said infrastructure and capacity building, but mostly capacity building in the sense of staff. And then it's weird worded goal, but we liked promotion of experimentation, risk-taking, and innovation.
We just kind of discussed the goals that were on here and kind of crossed out things we didn't like, and they, it's why reinvent the wheel? It's kind of going good the way it's going now. So anyway, Anything else, guys? That's fine.
Okay, Rita from Alpine. We kind of said what everyone else said, but one thing we came up with that no one said was to expand the marketing of library services, something along the lines of a statewide PSA.
We tied ours into information access, and we talked about resource sharing on a smaller geographic level, like through the cooperatives, for like ebooks. Instead of the state level, Khalifa and Enki, maybe we could do resource sharing for Overdrive through the whole cooperative, and maybe develop a pool of experts in areas. Now that we all have these we want to have maker spaces. Maybe get people in the community that are coders, and we could get some funding to have people come from different libraries that have different expertise. And is there anything else? Am I missing anything?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this was hard. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. This was hard.
The last one was planned to be hard. You got to
yeah.
have all the fun discussions first.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we had a good discussion, but it was hard. And so we came up. We talked about facilities as well. An issue that came up with us was the sustainability piece and how we can work towards having all, sustainable facilities. But we also talked about a little bit about universal literacy. Yeah, and that would be a good focal point.
Hi. So we spoke about facilities too, but as well on the goals side, we talked about unification statewide, a highly skilled workforce, and improved funding. And for specifics on that, statewide marketing plan and setting some California state library standards that also include core competencies for staff as well as standards for all other areas of the library and how it's used.
We talked about creating a California library app statewide that we'd all be in, and you could get books and services and events, and it would just, you open up your smartphone and your library thing would tell you what's going to happen right next door to you. And we thought that actually matched information access, civic engagement, and the human services part of IMLS goals.
On the goal of improve awareness of library services and resources, we recommend one card, one ILS.
We took the goal of content creation and we added access to that, because once you preserve the digital, we still want to access it. So our program would be preserving access to the digital data.
Great. Well, you can certainly hear some themes begin to emerge. And I think this is all very rich fodder for where the state library is going to be able to go in terms of creating the new plan. So thank you very much for all of this input.
So will we be able to see this as a draft document before it becomes the actual final thing and have a chance to look through the draft and...
The new plan?
Yes, exactly.
Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Absolutely not. It's like a total Star Chamber thing.